Good evening. I'm Brian Trumbore with your nightly review for Thursday, October 24th. Wasn't a good day on Wall Street. You would have thought we'd have some kind of rebound after a 243-point decline in the Dow Jones yesterday, but the Dow fell another 25 points to 13,077, or 0.2%. The S&P 500 was down 0.3% to 1408, its lowest since September 5th, and NASDAQ fell 0.3% to 2981. 60% of the companies in the S&P 500 continue to miss on the revenue side, and one of the high-profile losers today was Netflix, which plunged about 12% as the online video service cut its domestic forecast. Overseas, the London FTSE rose 0.1% and the Frankfurt DAX closed up 0.3%. Gold finished at 1702, that's as of 4 o'clock. ECB President Mario Draghi warned today of deflation, telling lawmakers in Berlin that, quote, in our assessment, the greater risk to price stability is currently falling prices in some euro area countries. Oil, as measured by West Texas Intermediate, closed at 85.60, and the CRB index is at 299.88. It's down about 5 points on the year, and the 10-year Treasury finished at 1.78%. Just a few poll notes. The latest Gallup poll has Mitt Romney ahead of Barack Obama, 50-47. A WBUR poll in Massachusetts, though, has Obama up 56-36. That's important because that hurts Republican Senator Scott Brown in his re-election bid against Democrat Elizabeth Warren. And the WBUR poll in Massachusetts has Warren up by 6 points. Also, a Quinnipiac poll in Connecticut shows Democratic Representative Chris Murphy 6 points ahead of Republican challenger Linda McMahon. Those are two very high-profile Senate races. Back to the 10-year Treasury, 1.78%. That's significant because today the Federal Reserve, the Open Market Committee, met and of course held rates steady at the 0.25% level. This is the last Fed meeting before the election. So the Fed's statement said growth in employment has been slow. Household spending has advanced a bit more quickly. The Fed repeated that it would press on with the asset purchases until the labor market improves substantially. Strains in global financial markets continue to pose significant downside risk, the statement said. Inflation recently picked up somewhat, reflecting higher energy prices. Of course, energy prices are now coming down. It said longer-term inflation expectations have remained stable. The Fed left unchanged its statement that highly accommodative monetary policy will be appropriate, quote, for a considerable time after the economic recovery strengthens, and repeated that interest rates are likely to stay near zero at least through mid-2015, so savers continue to get screwed. Purchases of new homes in September rose to the highest level in more than 2 years. That's good. Sales climbed 5.7% to a 389,000 annual pace, the most since April 2010. But back overseas, across the pond to Europe, a euro area services and manufacturing output composite index based on a survey of purchasing managers in both manufacturing and services fell to 45.8, far worse than expected and the lowest in more than 3 years. That's off a reading of 46.1 in September. Remember, a reading below 50 indicates contraction. Germany's manufacturing gauge, its PMI, fell to 45.7 from 47.4, so it's no surprise that German business confidence fell for a sixth straight month in October to hit its lowest level in almost 3 years. This is a closely watched IFO survey, and their president, Hans Werner Sinn, said, quote, "The clouds over the German economy are darkening," and that is not good at all. In my Week in Review written commentary at stocksnews.com last Saturday, I had a bit on European car sales. And just to repeat a few things, in September, year over year, car sales declined in Italy 26% and 37% in Spain. That is huge. So that gives you a pretty good idea on the true picture in Europe. So it should also be no surprise that Ford announced it is closing its plant in Belgium, which will result in the loss of 4,300 jobs. So that's not good, sports fans. Ford also warned its European operations could suffer losses of $1 billion this year. Ford's sales fell about 10% in Europe during the first half of 2012, and I think European sales account for about 25% of Ford's overall global sales. We did have some good news and potentially signs of a bottom in China. HSBC has a very influential purchasing managers index there. It's not the official government number, but this is viewed as being more legitimate, perhaps. Anyway, it came in at 49.1 for October versus 47.9 in September. So that is the best reading in 3 months. Now the PMI on the manufacturing side in China has not been above 50 in 12 months. I also saw that senior Japanese and Chinese diplomats have been meeting over the territorial dispute in the East China Sea, the Senkaku Islands to the Japanese, Diaoyu Islands to the Chinese. My only problem is that the nationalists in both countries won't want to see any compromise where there is a loss of sovereignty, or you will see major protest in both countries. Back in the US, Facebook shares rose 375 on good news. According to the company, 14% of advertising revenue in the last quarter, 150 million, came from its mobile business, which is basically 150 million from zero about 6 months ago. Mark Zuckerberg, Chief Executive Officer, said, "I want to dispel this myth that Facebook can't make money on mobile. This may have been true 6 months ago because we hadn't started trying yet." Overall, the company generated $1.26 billion in revenues, which was above street expectations, and earned 12 cents a penny ahead of expectations as well. So last I looked, shares were about $24. Just a note of caution regarding Facebook. About 1 billion shares will be eligible for sale on the public market when employee lockups expire in the next few weeks. In reporting that its profit fell 39%, Dow Chemical, the world's second largest chemical producer by revenue, announced it was shutting 20 factories and eliminating 2,400 jobs in Europe, the US, and Japan. This is just classic what's going on in the world. Dow CEO Andrew Liveris said the new reality is that we are operating in a slow growth and volatile world. The U.S. Department of Justice sued Bank of America for more than $1 billion on Wednesday, alleging the bank committed civil fraud by selling defective home loans to U.S. government-backed mortgage companies, Fannie and Freddie. The lawsuit said that Countrywide, the mortgage originator that B of A acquired in 2008, implemented a process called the Hustle to deal with loans at high speed without checking their quality. These loans were then sold to Fannie and Freddie, which guarantee most U.S. mortgages, and then they later defaulted. Isn't that nice? Jonathan Fahey, a reporter for the AP, had an interesting piece concerning U.S. oil production. Thanks to high prices and new drilling methods, U.S. production of crude and other liquid hydrocarbons is on track to rise 7% this year to an average of 10.9 million barrels per day. That'll be the fourth straight year of crude increases and the biggest single-year gain since 1951. The Energy Department forecasts that U.S. production of crude will average 11.4 million barrels per day next year, and the significance of that is that the Saudis right now have output of about 11.6 million barrels. Citibank forecast U.S. production could reach 13 to 15 million barrels per day by 2020, helping to make North America, quote, the new Middle East. However, you need to sustain high prices to encourage the drilling, and a lot of the methods in the U.S. to tap oil reserves are very expensive. So if you see the price of oil falling much further than the current 85, that's going to lead to cutbacks in production. Former British Prime Minister Gordon Brown is currently the UN Special Envoy for Global Education. He's declaring November 10, the 1 month after the attempted assassination of Malala, the Pakistani girl. He wants to launch a campaign titled Malala and the 32 Million Girls Day, because this is what Malala had been campaigning on, blogging about the 32 million girls around the world who are not at school. In reading a BBC News piece, I was struck by the fact that Pakistan has 49.5 million illiterate adults, 2/3 of them female. You know, Newsweek is folding up end of December, but I just got my October 29th issue. Over the years I've written a lot about Barack Obama, and what cracks me up is the likability factor and how he scores so highly in likability. And my point has always been, he doesn't like you, he doesn't like me, he doesn't like people. So here's this blurb in Newsweek. Former Obama aide Neera Tanden, explaining why the president didn't call Bill Clinton, said, "It's stunning that he's in politics because he really doesn't like people." That's my political statement. Big news for Brooklynites. The New York Islander hockey team announced on Wednesday that they've agreed to move to Brooklyn's new Barclays Center. Moving from Long Island, though it's not starting, and this doesn't take effect until the beginning of the 2015-16 season, but that is a very big deal for Brooklyn. And finally, I just want to thank or note the tremendously generous donation on that hedge fund manager John Paulson made to the Central Park Conservancy, $100 million. And I know some people out there can say, well, John Paulson's worth billions, what's $100 million? $100 million is a lot of money, and that's going to do a ton of good for Central Park. Their annual budget is $45.8 million. Did you know that Central Park is 843 acres? I didn't. Never remember that. Well, that's all for tonight. I'll be back with you tomorrow, Thursday. As always, go to stocksandnews.com. Go to Week in Review for far more detail, especially on the international affairs front. And remember to keep the men and women of our armed forces in your thoughts and prayers. I'm Brian Trumbore. Take care.